10 people wait at a bus stop in Lagos. 10 more wait in Reykjavik. Genetically, the difference between any two humans on Earth measures less than 0.1%. Skin color still ranges from pale cream to deep brown. Across that tiny genetic gap, something drove that range, and it wasn't tribe or nation. It was ultraviolet light hitting bare skin for 1 million years. Go back roughly 2 million years to East Africa. Early hominins were losing their body hair. Geneticist Alan Rogers led a team in 2004 that traced mutations in the MC1R gene and estimated that dark, protective skin pigmentation had been locked in by at least 1.2 million years ago, right around when fur disappeared. Fur blocks sun, and removing it left skin exposed to equatorial UV radiation strong enough to damage DNA directly. One target of that damage is folate, a B vitamin needed for DNA synthesis, sperm production, and healthy fetal development. Anthropologist Nina Jablonski found that intense UV exposure can break down folate circulating in the bloodstream within roughly an hour of unprotected sun exposure. Reduced folate raises the risk of neural tube defects in developing embryos and lowers sperm counts in men. For a species reproducing under equatorial sun, that damage strikes directly at fitness. Melanin blocked it. Melanin, the dark pigment, produced by cells called melanocytes, absorbs UV photons and converts that energy into heat. Before it reaches DNA, populations whose ancestors stayed near the equator for tens of thousands of years kept high melanin production locked in through selection. Their descendants still carry that same protective pigment, built by chemistry to answer one problem: sunlight strong enough to damage DNA. Then people moved. Homo sapiens groups walked north out of Africa, somewhere between 70,000 and 50,000 years ago, following coastlines into the Levant, then into Europe and Central Asia. Sunlight up there behaves differently. Days shorten, UVB weakens, and for months at a stretch, the sun sits too low in the sky to trigger vitamin D synthesis in skin at all. Vitamin D regulates calcium absorption in bone. Without enough of it, bones soften. Rickets, a childhood disease that leaves legs bowed and skulls malformed, became a genuine threat. Once populations settled far enough north, while still carrying skin tuned for tropical sun, selection responded by favoring gene variants that reduced melanin, letting weak UVB penetrate deep enough to build vitamin D. In European populations, the SLC24A5 gene carries one of the strongest signals of recent selection found anywhere in the human genome, and geneticist Sandra Beleza dated its spread to somewhere between 19,000 and 11,000 years ago. Diet complicated the pattern. Arctic groups, such as the Inuit, never turned especially pale despite living at extreme northern latitudes with almost no winter sun. Traditional Inuit diets built around seal, whale blubber, and fatty fish supplied vitamin D directly through food, easing the pressure on skin to lighten. Skin color tracks a balance between UV exposure and dietary vitamin D intake, with latitude playing only part of the role. In 2000, anthropologists Nina Jablonski and George Chaplin mapped measured skin reflectance data from populations worldwide against satellite UV readings. Population skin tone predicted regional UV intensity with a strength that beat every other variable they tested, including temperature. In 2017, geneticist Sarah Tishkoff sequenced pigmentation genes across ethnically diverse groups within Africa and found more genetic variation in skin tone inside the continent than exists between an average Nigerian and an average Swede. Some southern African populations, including San hunter-gatherers, carry lighter pigmentation variants nearly identical to variants found in Europeans and South Asians. Tishkoff's data suggests those variants are ancient, older than the migration out of Africa, and were inherited independently by separate populations. rather than exported from one origin point. Light skin in East Asian populations didn't arise from the same mutation found in Europeans either. Researchers studying the OCA2 gene and related loci in East Asian genomes identified separate mutations, producing a similar lightning effect. Two populations reached pale skin through different genetic routes, solving the same vitamin D problem with different biological tools. No single event produced what people now call race. Skin tone shifts gradually across geography, shaped over hundreds of generations by UV intensity, diet, migration routes, and chance mutation. Walk from Kinshasa to Oslo, along any route real humans traveled, and the record shows a gradient, never a hard boundary. Sharp categories built around skin color arrived through culture centuries later, layered onto a biological process that carried no ranking or hierarchy inside it. Modern movement broke the old alignment. Populations now live far from the UV zones their ancestors adapted to. Someone with skin tuned for cloudy Scandinavian winters can spend a career working outdoors in Arizona. Someone with skin tuned for the equator can live a life in Manchester, rarely producing enough vitamin D without a supplement, sunscreen, and vitamin D pills. Now, do chemically what migration once solved genetically on a timescale of years instead of generations. Skin color still reads to most people as identity, as ancestry, as something fixed. Underneath that reading sits a slower record, where your ancestors' bodies stood relative to the sun, written into a pigment with one function, managing the trade-off between too much ultraviolet and too little. Every shade on the planet answers that same equation, arrived at independently more than once, by one species spreading across wildly uneven sunlight. If you want the next breakdown like this, subscribe.